My name is Nathan Chavez. Okay, so today I'm going to speak to you guys about Tupac Amaru Shakur. How many of you know who Tupac is? Pretty much everyone? Okay, so there's a few of you. Tupac is a very famous rapper. He's known for the whole East Coast, West Coast rivalry / movement that is now doesn't exist anymore. So Tupac was very successful. He is very well known. If you Google his name, you will see tons and tons of information about him. So now that you know, he's a rapper, actor. He did a little bit of everything. So, okay. Next I have a picture of my family. Now you may wonder, what does my family have to do with Tupac? My family, these people have nothing to do with Tupac. These are all my nieces and nephews. Like Tupac, I also have a motivation and an inspiration in my family. These are all my biggest fans, and they all inspire me to achieve my best, accomplish all my goals, and they're always there to cheer me on. So these people are number one, my parents and my nieces and nephews. So you may be wondering, Tupac Shakur, how did he come into my life? I was actually introduced to Tupac at a very young age, which is not good if your parents are against parental advisory music, or he cusses a lot in his music. I didn't repeat any of the words, but okay. My brothers, much of my family all my brothers and sisters are way older than me. So Tupac was always around. I was always listening to Tupac. My brothers would always play him in the car, and I was very attached to them, so I would go everywhere with them. Although they didn't live the lifestyle that he lived, his music was very inspirational to their generation, and it's reflected a lot on me, because my brothers inspire me a lot to do everything that I do. So Tupac Shakur, first I'm going to tell you a little bit of background information of his early life. Then I'm going to go on and talk about his career and the influence the media has on his career. Then I'm going to tell you how or why Tupac should be a positive influence in your life rather than a negative influence like much of the media has portrayed it. This is Tupac's first rap group. He was born in New York City, which is on the East Coast, opposite of his side that he so-called defended. He was born in New York City in 1971. He was born to Afeni Shakur and Billy Warland, he was white, she was black, so, which is really crazy. They were both members of the Black Panthers, so Tupac was exposed to a lot of things that normal children shouldn't be exposed to growing up. He spent much of his young life with people that were struggling and that were imprisoned in the past and were victims of oppression. Lots of things that he spoke about in his music and in his personal life. Tupac attended the Baltimore School of the Arts, where he learned poetry, jazz, ballet, and lots of other topics that you would think that Tupac never ever studied. Tupac was actually a very intellectual individual. He loved to read, and he read a lot in his young life and also when he was in jail later on, but I'll get to that. So this is his very first rap group, Strictly Dope. They all met and got together after Tupac moved to Baltimore. His family then moved him to Marin City in California, and that's where he formed Strictly Dope. They were, according to various sources and the Tupac official website, they were not very good. They were okay, but they weren't very good. They spoke a lot about different political... They spoke a lot about politics, which wasn't really popular at the time. So now that we spoke about Strictly Dope, let's talk about Digital Underground. They don't look like very inspiring individuals. So Digital Underground was Tupac's... So Strictly Dope was performing one day at Tupac's guardian's home in the backyard, and there was a member from Digital Underground who went to listen to him, and they liked Tupac, but they didn't think that he was going to be a huge star at the time. So Tupac, being the outspoken and pretty much crazy individual that he was, he captured their attention, and they hired him as like temporary help, kind of like as a roadie to carry the speakers and set up the stage and do different odd work, but he definitely wasn't the main rapper of the group. And this caused a lot of problems between Tupac and Digital Underground, because Tupac wanted to be a headliner, and he always was trying to like make his way to the front of the stage, and they were constantly telling him like, hey, stay back, like we're trying to get our job done. So eventually Tupac was recognized by Digital Underground, and they made a few different songs where Tupac was a headliner, and those were some of the biggest hits that they've had to this day. Now, Tupac went on to carry his own career. So this was his first solo album, which is titled Thug Life. As many of you know, he had Thug Life across his stomach, and that's not one of the best things about Tupac, but that was him. So Thug Life was actually his first really successful album. A lot of people recognize it as the truest album that he ever made, because he spoke a lot about the political oppressions that he'd gone through and different experiences in his life, and mostly just about topics that were dear to his heart, which was different than the East Coast, West Coast, which was definitely not part of what it was. So one story about Tupac, when he was presenting a single from this album at like a promotional concert, there was, after doing the concert, he was doing an autograph signing, and it was a few hours after the concert had ended. Something happened between his security group, his security personnel, and some of the audience members. Bottom line, there was shots fired, and somebody was shot. A child, actually, was shot a couple hundred yards away from the scene. So Tupac actually fled. He had nothing to do with the shooting, and later on it was confirmed that his security group did not have any weapons on them. So this kind of foreshadows the type of things that happened to Tupac. A lot of his career was shadowed by things that he didn't really have anything to do with. A lot of different crime situations that he was involved in that weren't directly a result of his actions. So after this, Tupac and his security group, they fled from the scene, and later on they were in a trial. Bottom line, this began all of Tupac's bad fame, kind of as a thug and gangster rapper. Well, shortly thereafter, a few months later, he was on the streets promoting an album, and police from Oakland accused him of jaywalking. They beat him really bad, and he was in the hospital for a few weeks, which was kind of a pivoting moment in Tupac's career and life, because he then turned a lot of his focus from being an intellectual rapper to a political oppression, like against the police rapping style. So that's Thug Life. This is a picture of him and his co-stars, co-workers. So the last slide was that's a little bit of his background information, his early career. Now I'm going to talk about his actual mainstream career that everybody knows about, and some of the media influence that had on his life. This is Death Row. Tupac was imprisoned after he was shot. I'm sorry. Tupac was shot. He was shot multiple times. But one of those times he was shot, which was a result of the East Coast, West Coast battle. He was shot going into a recording studio in New York, and supposedly something happened. They were blamed the Notorious B.I.G., Biggie Smalls, and Puff Daddy. So they were blamed for it. Tupac was very resentful towards them because they had spent time together as friends, and they were up to then they had had no so-called beef. So after this, during the same time, Tupac was going through a trial in which he was accused of raping somebody. He was later acquitted of those charges, but the woman who he had been with in earlier situations she consented whatever sexual relationships they had. So they were fine. Whatever happened, they were at a hotel room, and she accused him of raping her, bottom line. Tupac then went on to fight the charges and was actually imprisoned against the jury's common sense or knowledge. It just didn't paint a good picture for Tupac at all at the time. He was later imprisoned, and at the time he read lots of books. He was very inspirational to a lot of people. Tony Danza was actually in very close contact with him and visited him, which is it was just interesting because Tupac actually wasn't just inspirational to a certain group. He inspired different groups, because Tony Danza is totally not, he's not like African American or any of that, but he was inspired by Tupac. So when Tupac was in jail, he spent a year in jail, and he was approached by Suge Knight. Suge Knight offered him a very considerate, very nice record deal, and he offered to post his bail in order to get him out of jail. So many people say that this was Tupac's like signing a deal with the devil. Suge Knight was known for being aggressive and always being in different gang brutality situations. So Tupac joined Death Row, and they went on to make different albums. All Eyes on Me was a album that Tupac did, and California Love, which much of everybody knows in here. So Tupac went on to be very successful with Death Row, but from a very early age, Tupac, he was kind of predicting his death. He always felt like he had to go to great cost to prove himself because he felt he was going to die at a very young age. So Tupac went on to create various albums with Death Row, and he went on to create multiple albums with Death Row, and he was very successful. So with success comes lots of good friendships. As you can see, he was very close with Mike Tyson, and this was a good relationship that he had with Mike. He was very inspirational to a lot of people, like I said. And one night when he was watching a Mike Tyson fight, after the fight, he went through him and Suge Knight and their posse was going through a casino in which they confronted an individual from an opposing gang, and they were in a physical altercation with the individual. He then scattered. Everybody scattered. It was caught on video, but nobody really knows what happened. Tupac was involved in this, and they were later seen fleeing the scene. So Tupac then made a bad decision. This is a picture of Tupac and the Notorious B.I.G. They were friends before, just in case nobody knew. That's a picture of Tupac right before he died. This was after they had left the Las Vegas casino, where they were last seen in Suge Knight's BMW. So Suge Knight was actually not a very good person in Tupac's life. He had lots of people who were very inspirational to him, and he was definitely not one of them, but he propelled Tupac's career and gave him a lot of what he wanted in his life. So now that you know that about Tupac, I'm going to again put up, there we go, a picture of my family. Again, it has nothing to do with Tupac, but now that I've told you a little bit about his early life, his career in the media influence, I'm going to tell you why Tupac should have a positive influence on you guys, why it's relevant to you. Like I said, my family inspires me to do everything in life. They inspire me to accomplish all my goals and achieve my full potential. Tupac felt that he had a great responsibility to his fans, and he always wanted to live up to the standards of his fans. And although the media casted a bad shadow on him, he was actually a very good individual, and he was an enlightened individual. He loved to study just like we all do. So with that, I'll leave you guys with a note. You guys should, any of your dreams that you want to accomplish, all of you can do it. You're all strong enough to be whatever you want to be and do whatever you want to do. So find something that drives you in life and accomplish all of your goals. That's all I have for you guys today. Thank you.